Due to advances in technology and bioscience, the most efficient ways emerging to treat pain and injury revolve around the nervous system. Using the human body's amazing ability called neuroplasticity, it is now possible to activate increased strength, pain-free movement, and faster healing. This is the Newbie device, a patented electrical stimulation device used for neuromuscular re-education. While conventional treatments for pain and injury only manage symptoms, the Newbie device allows you to work at the source of the problem. Using this approach, 90% of individuals notice meaningful progress in the very first session, and evidence is showing those early results also lead to faster overall recovery from most injuries and surgeries. There's finally help for people having difficulty recovering from injury, living with chronic pain, or experiencing challenging neurological conditions. Ask your doctor or therapist about the Newbie from NewFit, accessing the power of the nervous system to improve outcomes.
Every day at Permobile, we are helping families battling disabilities throughout the world. Our company was founded under one belief that every person has a right to independence and mobility, and that idea is as strong today as it's ever been. Our passion goes into building wheelchairs and complex rehabilitation accessories so that every product is customized for every individual's needs. We are so passionate about giving back to organizations such as Team Luke Hope for Minds that in 2017 we started the Permobile Foundation so that individuals can live a life without limitations. The Permobile Foundation helps them by sponsoring fundraising events, by building accessible playgrounds, and by providing donations such as equipment so that these individuals have access to their independence and mobility. Permobile and the Permobile Foundation are honored to partner with Team Luke Hope for Minds in their efforts to support families and children battling brain injury.
I'm very excited, and I know a lot of you are as well, for our wonderful speaker, Jeri LaVigne. So I want to go ahead and give her a brief introduction. There's so many wonderful things to say, but I'm just going to go ahead and share a little bit of her background for you today and let her take it away from there. But to start off, she is an educational psychologist who is most interested in the health of your brain. She holds a diploma in functional neurology, and she has been working in the field of brain health for more than 30 years, helping children and adults reach their goals and dreams by teaching them how to better process information and create optimal brain performance. So Dr. LaVigne is an Ireland director as well, so she is certified in the Ireland method as well, and she is a neurofeedback practitioner because every brain is truly different and unique. She offers several therapies that aid in the brain balancing, such as cold laser, kinesiology, and sound and light therapies, so very wide range. And she specializes in trauma, both physical and emotional. She's an international workshop facilitator, has a wonderful experience there to share with you guys today, and she has also assisted in a number of nonprofit organizations, such as the Anata World Health Education and the Roosevelt Ashley Foundation, to provide medical and educational programs and supplies to children around the world. So without further ado, go ahead and take it away, Jeri.
Thanks, you guys. Okay, so I have the loud gene, and the more excited I get, the louder I will get. So you just, I'll know to calm down. So please work with me. You won't insult me. It's really helpful for me. So before we get started, the first thing I'd like you to do is uncross your legs and take your hands and put them on each shoulder. And I want you to tap 10 times. Now put the other arm on top. Across your lap. Other arm on top. Okay. Right? So, we have a group of nerves that run between the two hemispheres, and the simplest way to explain this is when we get stressed, when we get under fluorescent lighting, when we're overwhelmed, that circuitry breaks down. And so those two hemispheres aren't talking anymore. And so, you know when you walk in the kitchen and you're like, why did I come in here? Or worse, you walk in the grocery store and you only had 3 things, so you didn't make a list. And to not get, you wind up with a buggy full of stuff that you didn't go for. That's because that corpus callosum is not letting the 2 hemispheres connect very well. So 10, 10, 10, 10, we'll turn that back on. That's an easy one. You can do it to your people. They don't have to be able to do it themselves. You can do it to them if that's an option. It's another thing to do. So I work with a lot of high school kids, and high school kids think everybody's watching them all the time, right? So there's an easier one, or one that they don't want to look like they're having a seizure. So another one you can do is one hand goes over the belly button, the other hand hits K27, those 2 little indentions right underneath the collarbone, and you just rub there for a second, and then change hands, do it the other way, it'll do that same thing. So different ways to turn the brain back on. When we're overwhelmed, when we're frustrated, when we've been under fluorescent lighting for too long a period, all of those kinds of things. And everything I'm going to talk to you about is super simple, and they work. And sometimes, if it's not complicated and it's not super expensive, we tend, especially as Americans, to think it's not real, or it's not important, or there's nothing behind it. I don't do anything that isn't research-based, and I don't do anything that doesn't work. I am a biggest bang for the buck kind of person. And that's what I want for you, okay? So, what's the best breathing exercise you can do? The one you'll do. What's the best exercise you can do? Do you get where we're going? The one you'll do. There is no one magic button. If there was, we'd all do it and we'd all be healed. So, what we want to do is put as many tools in the toolbox as we possibly can. And since so many of our therapies and so much of our technology is expensive, it's nice to have some things that aren't. And I am all about cheap and easy and fast. So, I will help you always in that way. All right, I don't think we have to spend a lot of time talking about what trauma is, but I just want to go over a little bit of the basics, and then let's talk about what we can do. So, a prolonged event, or a series of events that threaten our well-being, right? I'm not telling anybody in this room anything you don't already know. Trauma-informed care, a framework of thinking and interventions that are directed by a thorough understanding of the profound neurological, biological, psychological, and social effects that trauma has on an individual. And here's the most important part, and here's where I think we fall off the wagon sometimes. We have to recognize a person's constant, interdependent need for safety, connections, and ways to manage emotions and impulses. And that's what we want to talk about. That's what I want to talk about mostly today, is how we manage. Because whether you like it or not, every stressor, everything that you're having to deal with because of a situation that has been totally and completely forced upon you is going to eke out in you somewhere, some way, somehow. And the more we deal with it, the more we work to lower that over-arousal, the easier life gets. And everybody gets triggered. Everybody gets triggered. And there's not necessarily, so a lot of therapists that I know, their big answer is, well, just don't do those things. Don't go to those places. Don't hang out with those people. Well, that's not my life. I'm a head injury. I am 6.5 years out of a traumatic brain injury. I couldn't drive for months because I couldn't look at taillights. Every time I got in the car, I was triggered. I'd have to pull over on the side of the road and have a full-blown panic attack. And I'm not like that. I just keep going and going and going and going. And for me to get to the point where I was completely incapacitated and couldn't drive down a highway, and nights 12 times worse because the lights are so much brighter at night, was very humbling for me. Because I'm the one, I don't quit, I don't get tired, we just keep going, it doesn't matter. I'll martyr this right through with you, right? That's never been my problem. And to get to a point where I was so incapacitated that I couldn't drive 15 miles, and I live in Atlanta, there's not ever a time you don't see brake lights. So I had to learn for myself how to get it back together. I had to learn how to put it back together. And the thing about trauma is it filters everything we see and everything we do. And we don't even recognize it. It's so subconscious. And if you're consciously recognizing that trauma is filtering how you're dealing with life, then there are 40 other ways that subconsciously that's happening that we're just not even aware of. And my job is to make you feel as good as humanly possible given our circumstances. So there are 3 main classifications of trauma. There's acute trauma, which is one single overwhelming event. Their memories, their hypervigilance, exaggerated startle response. You guys are all super aware of primitive reflexes, right? So I had like not the easiest childhood. So I've always had Moreau and fear, primitive reflexes. And man, after that accident where I went through the windshield, yeah, you can imagine how intense those had gotten. Type 2 is a complex trauma, results from extended exposure to traumatizing situations. And type 3, it's one event that lasts and lasts and lasts and lasts. So the reason I buzz through these is, what kind do you have? You have all of them. All 3. And what does that start to look like? That starts to look like compassion fatigue. And I know that you have heard 400 times, if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of anybody else. And doesn't it kind of sound like that in your head after you've heard it so many times? Because these people have no freaking idea what you're dealing with. They don't understand the pain, and they don't understand the frustration, and they don't understand the loss of hope. So if you just go get your nails done, if you just take an afternoon walk by the river, shut up. Yes, I want you to go get your nails done and take an afternoon walk by the river, for sure. But I got people that can't do that. They can't leave the room for an hour and a half or 2 hours, right? So we've got to work with what we've got, and we've got to make that work. So, well, this is kind of obvious, but trauma affects every relationship in your life. Isn't it so easy to get up and scream at your partner because the egg got overcooked? When that has absolutely nothing to do with anything, you couldn't be more appreciative that somebody made you an egg. But what's all that other stuff that's behind it, that's the stuff we got to get to. And no, some of it's not fun, and some of it feels like ripping off a Band-Aid, but it's so much easier when we get on the other side, or we at least start to go through it. And when we get in that tunnel, and we see a light at the other end, and it's not a train, that's hopeful. And then, when we start to do the work and we realize we're the ones that made the tunnel, even better. So, vicarious trauma, compassion fatigue, and call it whatever you want. Being stuck in the situation that you're in is what we're talking about. Flashbacks, nightmares, avoidance. Yeah, that whole thing about, well, just stay away from your triggers. Really? I have to go to the bathroom. Hyperarousal, increased startle response, hypervigilance. So here are other ways that when we don't deal with our trauma as a caregiver, because I've done both, I have been the caree and the carer. So sleep disturbances, appetite changes, right? Lowered self-esteem. Oh my gosh, and the guilt. If I just hadn't turned my head, if I'd just been more aware, if I hadn't walked into the other room, if I hadn't let him go to Joey's house. You can't. That shoulda, woulda, coulda is crazy making, and it's not gonna solve anything. And again, that's one of those things. It's so easy for me to stand up here and say that to you, but I'm telling you that once we know there's another way to do this, and once we know that there are ways out of that horrific pain and frustration, and we know that they work because we've seen other people do them, and we choose not to, that's a choice. And that sounds really mean, but it's true. So we have to decide what it is we want and what it is we can give. And think about this. If initially I have a patient who's not willing to do the work for themselves, who's going to take care of your patient? If you stroke out or jump off a bridge, who's going to take care of that person? So initially, even if it sounds selfish and cruel and a horrible thing to do for yourself, then let's think about what would happen if you weren't in the picture. I can't tell you how many people come into a caregiver role where they are traumatized already, where they were traumatized as a child. And so it's an easy energy to plug into because it's comfortable, it's familiar. We don't always do what's good for us, we do what's familiar to us. And sometimes that role is easy to slide into and hard to pull out of, not the caregiving role, but the caregiving role where you're receiving some level of care as well, right? That's hard to pull out of that pain and that misery and that frustration because I know how to do this. The first time I got married, my husband was my mother. I married my mom, and it wasn't that we were so in love. In my head, it was, oh, I totally know how to do this. I totally know how to play this role. So we get into the same, it didn't last, FYI. So we get into the same kind of thing with caregiving. Oh, I know this role. I know this trauma. I know how to do this. So we want to be able to see that for what it is and pull back. So, oh my gosh, are you so tired of also hearing about the vagus nerve? Well, let me tell you right now. The vagus nerve is your best friend. And you want to develop a loving, compassionate, super close relationship with your vagus nerve because it's absolutely going to save your butt when nothing else will. So, and there's all kinds of deep philosophical, scientific explanations, and the vagal system, of course, is complicated and it has all these different parts, and that's lovely. And if you want to know about that, we'll do it. But what I want you to know is how to turn the darn thing on and how to make it stronger and stronger and stronger. And the cool thing about breathing exercises is you can do them anywhere and nobody knows what you're doing. So while you're sitting there holding a laser on somebody, you can do your own breathing exercises. While you're laying there in bed trying to figure out what the heck you're going to do the next day, how are you going to get through this, you can do your breathing exercises. Yes? All right. So we want to be able to turn off that overwhelm. We want to be able to turn off that sympathetic system. We want to be able to calm things down. And there are lots of different ways to do that. One of my favorites is 4-7-8 breathing. You guys familiar at all? Can I run through it real quick? You breathe in through the nose for 4 counts. You hold for 7. You breathe out through the mouth for 8 counts with your tongue as a roof of your mouth. Why do babies suck their thumbs? When you put pressure here, helps calm the limbic system. Self-medicating. So, you breathe in for 4, you hold for 7, you breathe out for 8. Sadly, I did not invent this. It is all over the internet. Go to YouTube and type in 4, 7, 8 breathing. Somebody will do it with you. You do it 4 times. So I'm not asking you to do an hour and 45-minute meditation sitting on a cushion in a pretzel position. What I'm asking you to do is take 56 seconds and do this exercise 4 times. And if you're dizzy, do it 4 more times. And then take a break. It works. When you're breathing, your inhale needs to be half your exhale. So if you breathe in for 2 counts, breathe out for 4. If you breathe in for 6 counts, breathe out for 12. That's going to stimulate that vagus nerve. It's going to improve our vagal tone. And these are easy, and they work. And if you're a geek, I'll send you the research behind them. They work. So that's what we're doing. We're engaging that social nervous system, right? We're engaging that part that will help balance out the rest of the system. All right, so here's one of my other favorite things. This is called temporal tapping. So I'm a big believer in EFT. So I do a lot of tapping. So this is a totally different, have you ever done tapping where you do yeah, I like that. Feels good. So this is a totally different kind of tapping. So what you're gonna do, God, I wish I had another hand. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna start, how am I doing on time? On the outside, so hands like this, and you start right in front of the ear, and we're gonna, I don't know my right from my left. We're gonna start on the right side. Oh, I got it right. And that tap goes all the way around the ear like that. On that bony ridge. Does that make sense? So we start here, and we go all the way around. So, when we're doing, that's the first step. And then we're gonna do it on the left side. But there's a couple of caveats. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna think of something we want to be different. And on the right, your affirmation, your thought, your prayer, and call it whatever you want, is positive. So I feel peace in this moment. We also want to stay in the present tense. I feel peace in this moment. I feel peace in this moment. 5 times. I feel peace in this moment. I feel peace in this moment. I feel peace in this moment. Then, on the left side, we're going to do it again, but we're going to use contraindicator. So we're going to make it negative. I do not have any trouble finding peace. 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 So the right's positive, the left's negative, but it's not I can't find peace. All right? It's I don't have any trouble finding peace. Does that make sense? You use a negative word in the sentence, but not in a negative way. Does that make any sense? Okay. And short. Don't do a 45-minute affirmation. Don't put everything in one thing. Or if you do, God help me with everything I'm doing. Right? I mean, keep it short, keep it simple. So, on the right, we describe in positive terms. On the left, okay, so I find that staying calm and relaxed is easy. And here's the cool thing, you don't even have to believe it. I don't care. I want you to put into motion what you desire and what you require. When I do mentoring with people, I ask them to take out the words want and need. They do weird things to your subconscious mind. So, I desire and I require. So I find staying calm and relaxed is easy. I always have more than enough money for whatever I want or desire. I feel peaceful and free. And use your own words. You don't have to completely believe that this is possible, but you do have to put it in terms that you can relate to. Does that make sense? Use your words, not my words. Then, that's the right side. And then on the left side, we do the same thing, but we change the sentence, such as no longer, don't, can't, not, isn't, right? So, I no longer struggle to stay calm and relaxed. Having enough money is not an issue. Feeling peaceful and free isn't a problem. And again, I know this sounds silly. These things work. This is how I get people to go to the dentist. This is how I get people to get on airplanes. This is one of the big things I use with trauma, because this works. So, again, I didn't make it up. It's all over the internet. You can Google temporal tapping and you'll get all kinds of information on it. But that's basically the most simple way I can explain it. So here are just some examples. Weight loss. I don't have to eat much food to feel full. And then the positive, I feel full on smaller amounts of healthy foods. Job performance. It's no trouble to finish my work while feeling calm and relaxed. I feel calm and relaxed while easily finishing all my work, right? Fingernail biting. I don't know why that comes up in my practice so often. You'd be amazed how many people chew their hands. I don't have a problem with letting my fingernails get healthy and strong. My fingernails are getting stronger and longer every day. So you can use this for anything. Like, I don't want to get up and walk the dog. I mean, I don't care what it is. You can use this for anything. And on those days that are really hard, I can totally get through today. I can totally get through today without falling apart. I can totally get through today without falling apart. I am not going to fall apart today. I am not going to fall apart today. I am not going to come unglued. I don't care what your terms are. Use them. All right. I talked to you about how to do it. Identify something you want to change. Create the affirmation. 3 times. I do it 5. I don't know. It's my number. And you can do this as often as you want. I have people that, next time you're on an airplane and you see somebody going like this, that's my patient. You'll know them. You'll say, do you know Jeri? I know Jeri. All right. One other thing I want to talk to you about, and then I'll talk fast, is Irlen syndrome. So Brandon did a beautiful job this morning. Is he not just the best? He's the best. So Brandon did a great job this morning talking about all of this stuff, and the cerebellum especially. So your best friend is your, come on, you can do it. Thank you. Your second best friend is your cerebellum, right? Because it's going to regulate everything. Everything. So I want my brain as well as your brain to work as well as humanly possible. There are very few of us that are in a traumatic situation that didn't already have trauma coming in. And here's the kicker. Your brain doesn't know if it's physical or emotional. Trauma is trauma is trauma. And the brain's going to respond the same way, regardless of how it happened. So, one of the ways that I use personally to calm things down is with Irlen spectral filters. So what's Irlen syndrome? It's a visual perceptual disorder. It's neurologically based. It involves a lot of parts of the brain, definitely the visual cortex, but there's so many other parts. And we're doing some really exciting research right now with Cornell and with some other places, and really getting to see how when our brains don't process light correctly, how it disrupts the different networks and their ability to communicate with each other. Symptoms are varied. They are environmentally produced. We're on a continuum from slight to severe. Stressors can be lighting, contrast, colors, patterns, amount of print on a page, demands for continuous performance, demands for comprehension, print size, style, and format. Your patient doesn't care if you didn't sleep last night. They still need something done, right? That's demand for performance. Doesn't mean you're just in school. Yeah, there's demand for performance when you're in school, when you're at work. But you guys don't have a time when there's not demand for performance at home. It's not identified by standardized testing, and it's not a method of instruction. Honey, if I could functional neurology my way out of Erlin, I'd have already done that, right? Who has Erlin syndrome? So this is interesting to me, and I'm going to say this a little differently than I have it up there. 46 to 48% of people who've been diagnosed with a learning disability or disorder have Erlin to some extent. About 35 of those with ADHD have Erlin to some extent. However, a third of both of those groups has been completely misdiagnosed. That it's just the visual processing. And it's not always the whole answer, but sometimes it's a really big part of it. And every once in a while, it is the issue. So, 12 to 14% of the general population gifted and good readers. I think that is closer to 25% in my own personal experience. 70% of those with head injury, concussion, or whiplash. 80% of individuals with autism. Certain medical and visual conditions also will receive benefit from allowing the brain to process light correctly. So, symptoms: light sensitivity, inefficient reading, slow reading weight, attention deficit, strain or fatigue, poor depth perception. This has nothing to do with intellect. I have 2 PhDs. My second husband had to call me Dr. Jeri for 6 months, right? I'm not stupid, but there are things I cannot do without my lenses. Like, this person can't get on an escalator. I have no idea where to put my foot. And I'm that person, right, that holds up the whole line, and I'll just kind of stand there and rock. And the rocking doesn't really help anything, except it soothes me, I think. So I'm just standing there like, I don't know when to go. I don't know when to go. I don't know when to go. Honey, I put my lenses on. I think I'm Beyonce going down the escalator. It's so easy. I don't have to think about it. I just get on. Even in the Atlanta airport, and when you get off the train and you go to baggage claim, there's this huge escalator that goes down like this, and I can look like a full-blown Sherpa, and I can still get on that thing without missing a beat. Depth perception, strain fatigue. I have surgeons all over the Southeast in lenses because they get migraines from the lights in the operating room. They can't take medication. Nobody wants a dopey surgeon, right? I've got 3 pro golfers that couldn't get on the tour until I got them in lenses. And I was so excited because, they're going to do PSAs for me. They're going to talk about this. We're going to let the whole world know. I mean, Erlin's been around, y'all, for like 32 years. And every week I hear, why have I never heard of this? So we're working on dragging this company into the 21st century. But I'm thinking, I have these golfers. They're going to be so good. They're going to talk about this. They're all cute and they're young and they're just, it's amazing. And now they're all on the tour. Because they can focus, they can pay attention, their depth perception works, and their anxiety's down. So when I go to them and say, hey, Erlin Awareness Week, we just finished it. It was this last week. It's an international thing that we do. It's Erlin Awareness Week. Can we do a little will you give me a little interview? No. What? We don't want anyone to know. I'm like, what? No, we don't want anybody to know. And what I can't get the guys to understand is that what we have done is brought them to a level playing field. They now think they have this huge advantage. So they don't want any other golfers to know about it because they don't want them to have the same advantage. So we're still working on dragging this company into the 21st century. So here's some of the work we've done with Cornell, with fMRIs, with a functional MRI. These people are doing visual processing tasks while they're being scanned. The first scan on that top is one of my migraine girls. This is huge for migraines. So one of my migraine girls, and all that red, that's overactivity, right? That's that brain. That's why this looks like ADD so much of the time. If your words move on a page, or if the white's really uncomfortable, if the fluorescent light in the classroom's driving you crazy, and you start to get anxious, and you can't sit still, and you can't look at the page, and you're everywhere else, well, what does it look like you have? So easy to stamp your forehead with ADHD. I understand why people get misdiagnosed, I just don't like it. So the bottom, oh, I should have done Eamon first, that's okay. The bottom one is the same brain, literally less than 15 minutes later. All we did was pull her out of the scan, switch out her, because when you go into the scan, you have on glasses. We tried to make this as clean a study as possible. And you're in a dark room, so you don't know if you have your Erlen color on or if you have a clear lens on, because here's a cool thing. When you wear Erlen lenses, you don't see the color. Everything looks completely normal. So when you see all these people with all these different tints, white's white, blue's blue, green's green, it doesn't change anything. It doesn't change color. So my Cornell study people, they don't know which lenses they have on. So you pull them out, you switch out the lenses, you put them back in. They're still doing visual processing activities, and look how calm that brain is. Hard to fake an MRI. Right? So this is one that we did with Dan Amen. I don't know if you're familiar with Daniel Amen. He does a lot of brain research. He's turned out to be a really good friend, actually. And that first is a patient of Dan's that they did a bunch of testing and they couldn't find anything wrong. This is a SPECT scan. So SPECT's a little different than an fMRI. SPECT scan shows electromagnetic activity in the brain, and it shows blood flow. So with a SPECT, that first one, see all that white? Do you know that feeling when you think, if I have to read one more thing, if I have to be nice to another human being, I'm going to lose my mind? That's what our brains look like. So they did a bunch of testing. They couldn't find anything wrong with him. They sent him over to Erlen. They had him tested, put him in lenses. The second scan is the same brain 6 weeks later. The only difference is he wore his filters. So that's no med change, that's no diet change, that's no therapy. That's just putting on the lenses. I love this poster. One of my patients did this for me. One of the cool things about this is when you put kids in lenses, and I work with kids and adults, and when you put kids in lenses, they typically want to go to school and talk about it. So we get to do a lot of science fair projects and those kinds of things, which are really fun. And this was part of her project. So she uses a green overlay, and that's the first thing we do in testing is find your overlay color. And so when she puts her green overlay down on the page, she can read the words. And the rest of the page looks blurry, halo-y, the letters shift and they move and they're hard to see. So we were going to do a guided meditation, but sadly we are not. But if you go to efficientbrain.com and I'll give you that stuff in a minute. Hold on, here we go. Here's how to find me. If you go to efficientbrain.com, on the home page, I have a series of CDs. So if you want to learn more about how you process information auditorily, visually, and kinesthetically, that's on there. There's also a really nice meditation CD that's on there. They're all free. Because it's important information. We learn 3 ways. We learn consciously, subconsciously, and unconsciously. We all learn visually, auditorily, and kinesthetically. The trick is knowing which one you do on which level. So this research earned me a PhD. So it's good. It's been tested. I've got schools using it all over the place now, finally. And it really helps us to know how we process. Because And when I'm working with somebody, it's the very first thing we do is determine their processing style. And then we determine the processing styles of everybody else in the house. Because if you want your spouse to take the trash out and they won't, or you want a raise, or you just want to have one civil conversation with your mother, then if you know how that person processes information, you know how to feed it to them in a way that makes sense. Now, this is not a magic bullet, and you are not magically going to get everything you want just because you present this in a way that somebody else can hear you. It doesn't mean they're going to say yes. But at the end of the day, I think the only thing that we truly desire is to be understood. And if you know how to present something to somebody else in a way that you know that they can understand it, then you know you've been valued and you've been heard. And sometimes that's the piece we're missing. So it's super helpful to know how we think. So please take advantage of the website. The other thing you can do on the website is you can take that Erland self-test on the Erland screen. If you have yeses to those questions, call me. I'll find you if I'm not. So I live in Atlanta. That's where my that's like when they say, what's your permanent mailing address? That's what I have to check, right? Because that's where all the mail goes. I'm not necessarily there a lot. So if I am not in your area, I'll help you find somebody who is. We have diagnosticians and screeners in 46 countries, including the United States. So we'll certainly find you somebody. I think it's definitely worth looking into. The other nice thing about Erland is if you have yes answers to those questions, you have it. Welcome to the club. Congratulations. We're so glad you're here. You will not waste a penny. So it's really interesting. People call me and they think they're going to spend the next 6 months talking about their mama, right? Because at the end of the day, who screwed all this up, right? So they walk in the door and I'm testing them for Erland. I'm putting lenses on their head. I'm putting a laser on their head. Or typically, for those of you who have a laser, I've got to go. If you'll come by the room, I will teach you the very best exercise using the laser for motivation. And so I love doing this because people come in and they think they're going to spend the next hour complaining to me, and I put a laser in their mouth. Hard to talk about your mama with a laser in your mouth, because what I want is for you to get to the point where you don't give a darn what your mother's doing and she doesn't interfere with your daily life. If your life is working as best we can possibly get it, then nobody else really matters. And if somebody else wants to be an idiot, all of a sudden, some of that stuff can start to roll off the back, right? And sometimes people we love the most are the biggest idiots. They can't help it. They're doing the best they can with everything they've got. And so are you. You just have a bigger toolbox.